Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or Whatever Movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host Iris and I'm here with my older brother,
Wesley.
Today we're talking a movie from 1989, set in 1959, Dead Poets Society.
Patience, honor, discipline, excellence. Question: does the droning bagpipe represent their droning, procedural, traditional, repressional, generational, stuffy lives?
That opening ceremony was oddly religious. I mean, later it was like literally a religious service and they're singing from the hymnal and stuff, but that opening one wasn't religious, but seemed very liturgical.
Note to self, look up liturgical. Yeah, it was those ceremonial conclavial robes they seemed to be wearing. But also I think it was the parade of stuffy white teachers.
Conclavial. I think you made that word up.
I did. Zucchetto.
So they're setting the tone early on that this is a very uptight environment, at least vis-a-vis the environment as portrayed in Lean on Me. So this is like the anti-Lean on Me, where they're more preoccupied with if they're going to disappoint their parents as opposed to kids who are set out to defy their parents or whose parents are not involved.
Yeah. The other thing that old white teacher laid out that he didn't say was one of the credos of the school, one of the specific four, was also tradition. And tradition, of course, the relationship between the school and the parents. A lot of them had been students themselves, and between the parents and the kids having to live up to this standard of tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's Dead Poets Society's place in Teacher Month at Or Whatever Movies is not so much the dynamic between teacher and student, although that is super present here. It is the kids' struggle and education with this radical, forward-thinking teacher as opposed to the traditionalist styles. You know, think for themselves. Not on your life. At this age, are you crazy? Kind of thing.
You're the one that has said, I think, in every episode of Teacher Month that kids are idiots.
Yeah, kids are idiots.
So does that mean that you would treat them as idiots? Isn't it treating them as adults and as humans what brings the best out of them?
Yes. And that is what the old white dudes are hoping that tradition, the patience, honor, discipline, and excellence will bring out of them. I'm more interested in not so much Keating specifically or his type of teaching, but the efficacy of those teaching methods. They're not bad kids.
They're not bad kids.
In the first scene together in their dorm room or whatever, they talk as much about study groups as they do about excrement and their own school mottos and stuff.
These are not bad kids. These are not wayward kids that need to be reshaped and molded. I guess they're positioned to excel, and that's the point, is like how do we produce the most doctors and national merit scholars and lawyers, etc. But like that doesn't mean it needs to be a joyless experience.
You know, this film won Best Screenplay at the Academy Awards, written on spec by a dude who couldn't find a job. And it made me think of just now of the Academy, who, you know, for a long time was stuffy old white dudes. And that's something, right? That this sort of breakout little screenplay could succeed 35 years ago. But, they were going with tradition in a very narrow path that they had trod themselves. I guess it's what works because they are chairmen and dignitaries and junk. Presidents, maybe.
I mean, it's one thing if you choose to go to college and you get into a college like a Harvard or a Yale, one of these Ivy League schools, and you have the ambition, the drive, and you see this as the opportunity to achieve your goals. It's another if you're a high school kid and you maybe don't yet know what you want to do. You want to have the opportunity to explore things outside of your experience, outside of the experience of your parents. Like, they're young enough, impressionable enough that high school should be a time of exploration and not doubling down on whatever that track is that you're going to be in for the rest of your life. So it just seems like a little unnecessary pressure on these kids and also on these teachers. Well, I guess that's the idea, right? That's the theme of Dead Poet Society is conformity or anti-conformity. I think of conformity and anti-conformity as they relate to, all right, you're going to be the doctors and lawyers and the next leaders of the world, but also, what is it that Robin Williams says? It's poetry and romance and love. Those are the things that we actually live for.
Yeah, that we conform for, that we study hard for to get in a position in life to where we can enjoy those things, those luxuries,
exactly.
I guess. That's wildly paraphrasing and maybe even adding on to his idea entirely. He was talking about the unconscious tendency towards conformity. If you walk together, eventually you're going to begin to walk in sync. If you are a part of the Welton tradition, the Helton tradition, eventually you're going to fall in line with your parents and you're going to be what your parents are. And you're going to be everything that Kurtwood Smith wants Neil to be. You're going to be a doctor and we put everything and you can't disappoint me, Neil. And there's one path and that path does lead to success as proven by the school's track record and the alumni. But if you never think about it, that's where you're going to end up and maybe miss some of the passions that Robin Williams still sees. He's still got that, the mentality where he relates to the kids. He's just one of the guys when he comes in and tells off Nwanda for the stupid phone call prank. Not that far removed.
It's weird to consider that these characters are actually closer to our parents' age in their time context than anything close to us.
Yeah, you want to think so, don't you?
Well, I mean, if 59, Mom would have been 14. Dad would have been, 13? 13, 14? So there's a timelessness to this movie that I think allows it to still feel fresh. But did you feel the feels in rewatching Dead Poet Society?
I watched it more critically, and I didn't get the feels really, like emotionally. Those are long gone, decades past. But what I had forgotten about Dead Poet Society was the level to which Mr. Keating appealed to these kids, and they were receptive. What happens to Todd? Does he basically lets Keating fry? Is this just to show that he will stand up for himself based on Keating forcing him to compose a poem on the spot and saying, don't ever forget this? Todd is just going to go into the world still in the clutches of Helton and just maybe be able to stand up for himself. I mean, literally, Keating defined Neil's entire life, came to define his entire life because once his influence took hold, Neil was dead. And that made Ethan Hawke's character effectively the main character, but it was still Neil who was given the 5 Centuries of Verse poetry book.
Do you think, in your opinion, does the Dead Poet Society story hinge on Todd? And specifically that moment in the classroom when he stands on the desk and says, "Oh, Captain, my Captain."
Kelly and I were discussing this. Is he supposed to be the main character? He has the clearest arc, but in the end, the hopelessness that I didn't really feel like this was, as an adult, unfortunately, I didn't feel like the end was a soaring beacon of hope, or this movie necessarily. He affected, effectively, like half a dozen students who stood on the desk. People were in the Dead Poet Society and kept their heads down so they wouldn't get yelled at or expelled. He said to Nwanda, you getting expelled is not brave or clever. To me, that's stupid. And Nwanda got expelled. We never saw that dude again. He went to the office and he got expelled. And I think we saw him go back into his room and that's it. Todd stood on his desk in defiance of the teacher that he was going to have to deal with for a further 3 years? going to be a tough road to hoe for these kids.
Quick sidebar. You have to help me get these characters straight. I cannot tell Knox, Charlie, and Cameron apart.
Which one was
Who
Cameron?
was Nwanda?
I get it with Knox and Charlie. So Knox obviously was, because he had the puppy dog eyes and he was all about Chris. That's how I remembered Knox. Charlie, because he's Nwanda and the lightning bolt or the red on his cheeks. I forgot who Cameron was. Who's Cameron?
So Charlie Nwanda was the one who also was like, I exercise my right not to march.
Yes.
Right? The one who didn't lead the lesson on nonconformity.
Correct.
So then who's Cameron?
Who's Cameron?
Who's Cam?
I know there was Todd, and then Todd is Todd because he's Ethan Hawke. Then there's the glasses dude, and then Pitts was the one who looked like a serial killer with the flat top. That's all I remember. I don't remember who Cameron was.
Who's the redheaded kid?
He's Glasses Man, the redheaded kid.
All right. Wait, so who's the kid who has the turn? Who turns him, who rats him out?
Oh, okay. That's other flat top kid. That's Children of the Corn. He's the child of the corn.
Whether Neil or Todd is our main character, I think it's safe to say that both of them are important. Is Neil's story a cautionary tale?
Oh, absolutely. But it's not maybe for the reasons that people think. You know that Robert Sean Leonard was yelled at, a couple of times in his private life by people who said that he was wrong for glorifying suicide, teen suicide. And they were like, that's not... Maybe you're missing the point. And even if they are not, I don't know that they should come at Robert Sean Leonard with such an accusation, but whatever. It was a cautionary tale against, kids are going to be kids and kids are going to be idiots. And unfortunately, you have to allow for that in a way that Mr. Perry wasn't capable of doing. He was all kinds of wrong. Mr. Perry, Kurtwood Smith, he has no concept of Keating. It didn't stop him from saying, you stay away from my son. They're not the same age. Even if they both went to the school, they're not the same year. They're not even close. There's no overlap. And Keating didn't steer Neil wrong. He told him to go through proper channels with his dad. You have to talk to him. And after the show, when he showers Neil with the accolades, he thought he was in the clear. That he had spoken to his, he said, I talked to him and he's going to let me go through with it. And he's like, really?
You can see on Robin Williams' face that he knows Neil is lying.
My point is that Mr. Perry is just an asshat. He's the one who took things too far. Your kid is going to be a kid. And even if he is going to be a doctor, he's still going to have to go through the motions of idiocy and inexperience and passion that's going to come of being a kid. And if you don't provide for that outlet for them to pursue their passion, you cannot redirect it. And so that cautionary tale is a more parental cautionary tale, I think, than advice against kids. If you have issues where you feel like hurting yourself, talk to the people you trust. And he didn't. He didn't talk to Keating. He didn't talk to his friends. I guess Mr. Perry was harder in the script. He pulled him out of the play mid-play in front of everybody and then took him home, and that's why Neil killed himself. In this one, he allowed him to continue the play. He was embarrassed, but kind of more privately. And he said, tell me what you feel when Neil says, I have to tell you. And then Neil doesn't. Cautionary tale in that if you feel bad, tell people, somebody, anybody.
So if there is a fault, it's in the adults or the support network in Neil's life that didn't enforce this message that there's always another way. Maybe they didn't see it coming. If you assume that the flicker of doubt on Keating's face when Neil says that he's talked to his dad, if you assume that Keating knows that Neil is lying, can you say that Keating was responsible?
In this movie, in a place as an audience member where we are supposed to feel sympathy and we're supposed to like and admire the Keating character for who he is, knowing all that, trying to distance myself from that idea, I can't blame Keating. Keating may have done some unconventional methods, but I will say, even before he got that glimmer that he told Neil in no uncertain terms, you have to talk to him then. If you're going to do the play and the play is tomorrow, you have to talk to him before tomorrow. Now, Neil, talking to his dad or not talking to his dad, whether he convinced Keating or not, still was enacting the thing, following his passion that Keating promoted. And maybe if there was a failing on Keating's part, it was not grilling him and not pushing him out of this very fragile space of hope that he was in by the time he said he had talked to his dad. When Todd comes at Neil and is like, yeah, but your dad's never going to let him do it. He's like, Jesus, can you just be supportive for a second? Can you let me enjoy the idea? I don't even have the part yet. Not that Keating was privy to that conversation, but if he had said, look, are you sure? Are you lying to me? Because I don't want to get in trouble here. That might have derailed Neil's confidence. I know that there was concern. I read it more as sympathy and a feeling for the kid. Like, man, that must have been hard. And I'm proud of you for doing that. Go forth and live your destiny on the stage. I really didn't read it as, oh, Keating got what he wanted in Neil going through with the play, so we're going to let the consequences. But, he also took the consequences. Well, he cried, but he also was, grim-faced, and I'm no longer these kids' teachers. Please excuse me. I'm not addressing any of you while I go and get my stuff.
Springfest deals are still in full swing at Lowe's. Right now, get 5 bags of Stay Green Premium Color 2 cubic foot mulch for only $10. And get up to 40% off select major appliances. Plus, save up to $300 when you buy 2 or more select GE kitchen appliances of $396 or more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/16, excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details and qualifying items.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
And he didn't address the kids at all. Didn't make eye contact. Well, he did with Todd through the door, but didn't address them until Todd addressed him.
That was a little bit intimidating, that look.
Man, you're reading weird stuff into this.
Yeah, so are you. It's so weird.
I just saw a look
and it's weird because I feel like a lot of this movie hinges on the interpretation of these weird moments.
Okay. I read it as Todd looking longingly through the door and him feeling like us, the Dead Poets Society, maybe not me specifically, but the rest of us, some of us who you entrusted with this legacy, this tradition or whatever, we let you fry. And he put on his scarf and he looked through the door and he gave Todd a little smile. And he was like, I'm not supposed to be talking to you or whatever, but I'm letting you know that it's okay, kid. I don't blame you. He didn't glare at him through the door or anything.
It wasn't glary, but I felt like he had a stab of pain and betrayal. That I don't think he was intending necessarily to make Todd feel guilty, but I felt like he was communicating that he was hurt. Maybe not intimidating. I don't think that Keating is malicious in any way, but I do think that part of what he inspired in Todd was guilt.
Well, if that happened, was that kind of not Todd's failing? That of course he's going to feel guilty. He's going to feel bad. He wasn't the one who ratted Keating out.
Well, he signed his name on that paper.
He did, but he's a kid. He can't be accounted, and Keating knows that. And he broke protocol or whatever by saying, thank you, boys, and that was it. He didn't grab the bullhorn. He didn't have to stay black and die. It was fine.
I'm thinking about Teacher Month and recognizing that this is not the final episode in Teacher Month. We've still got Mr. Holland's opus to go. But something that has become apparent to me in reviewing these quote-unquote teacher movies is that I don't think I have a lot of respect for authority. I can remember a handful of my teachers. I can remember a handful of things that my teachers had said that made a difference in my life. But there was no Keating in my life. There was no Joe Clark. There was no Mr. Holland. What I'm saying is I can't understand why Neil Perry would not see that there is another way. And I didn't get a sense that he was emotionally, mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like he seemed like a pretty well-functioning kid. He was generous. He was inclusive. He was a leader. He was intelligent. He was creative. The whole movie, he's got this sparkle in his eye, and you just want to root for Neil. For me to believe that this kid believed that there was no other way, I guess I wasn't on board.
Oh, really? Okay, well.
For these kids to think that they had to sign, that they had no other choice but to sign that piece of paper.
Okay, you didn't have the Mr. Keating teacher, but you definitely felt the passions, the trials, the hopelessness of being a teenager. Seized the day. Neil seized the day. There was nothing beyond that day. There was nothing he was willing to risk everything to follow his newly found, I will grant you, passion of acting, but he was food for worms. They all were. And if he didn't do the thing, 10 years of medical school, Father, that's a lifetime. And he's like, stop being dramatic, because it's not, Mr. Perry's perspective, that is not, relax, dude. You're going to be wealthy. It's going to be fine. You're going to be 10 years older anyway. Neil never sees that. It's now, it's never. It's the example that Mr. Keating set. It's the example that Knox sets. If I don't get Chris, I'm going to kill myself. It's all immediacy. Only what matters in the moment. Not cleaning up the flying desk set, but throwing it, letting it take flight, letting it find its intended purpose. That's all that Neil saw, and it was the passion, I dare say, that drove him to such an extreme. He was so excited and elated and everything else. You could see the almost total, him fall back into the total resignation when he said, what is it? What do you feel? What is it, more of this acting business? Because you can forget about that, right? And he's like, yes, Father. It was like, okay. He was so thoroughly resigned. It took quite literally the life out of him. Plus, there was no mental illness in 1957. No mental health struggles whatsoever. It didn't exist. Our subsequent generations fabricated them.
Do you really believe that?
No.
Or do you think they were just unreported?
No. There are more categories. There's more opportunities for people to find their place. When we were kids, you had, 4 channels, 3 channels, and then Fox came along and shook things up, gave us 4 channels. We watched what was on. We put ourselves in categories that didn't leave a lot of wiggle room or fringe stuff, and now there's 1 trillion channels. Now there's 1 million categories of who you are and what you think about, and putting yourself in any one of those unlimited number of boxes helps you find your place, but the self-realization, the self-actualization simply wasn't present. It was what Mr. Perry said, and that was law for Neil. Your responsibility as Mr. Perry is to save your hoe, because your hoe is a little kid. And that's where he failed in saying, you can talk and you can tell me what your passion is, but it doesn't change anything whatsoever.
You can save your hoe because your hoe is a little kid. That is definitely the poster quote.
and there it is. You can't get away from it. You tried to get away from it. You can't. You're the same age as Mr. Perry, as Kurtwood Smith during the filming of this movie.
Why does he look so old?
You're basically the old lady with the curlers in her hair and the slippers, positioned on the side of the bed.
What character are you in Dead Poet Society?
I'm like Todd, but not so clearly wimpish. There was no part of me that could have stood on the desk, so that for him, for the Todd character, was an act of heroism. That was his willful defiance in the direct face of authority, who was saying, one more word and any one of you is expelled. It's like, ooh, and then Todd stood up. That's why the adult part of me is like, yeah, but what purpose did Oh Captain, My Captaining him serve as a tribute? You could have written him an email or a posted, wax sealed stamped envelope or something that would have told him how you felt. I mean, you weren't going to be at Welton forever, and Keating is only in his mid to late 30s. You can still find him and hang out with him.
Like post-Welton Whiplash style, like hang out at the bar and have a drink?
Not quite as dangerous, but there was no crime committed by Keating.
What is the importance of Todd's legacy-ness? People keep on bringing up Todd's older brother. I don't feel like the filmmakers do much with that.
Just this idea that he was, like the rest of them, expected to maintain this steady course. I'm sick of this, Todd. Sign that goddamn agreement, or whatever his dad said. He said it more properly. He just wasn't the one who was going to drag you out in the middle of your play, but they were just as forceful. I mean, come on. Sending a kid a desk set is already traumatic. To do it twice consecutively is horrific.
It's pretty horrific. And I get that emphasizes the idea that he is the forgotten kid. He's the Gordy in the LaChance household. Maybe there's a part of Todd that wishes that he had a dad like Neil Perry, whose focus was solely on him Also, I have another question, and this is because ultimately I think I was kind of out of the viewing experience of Dead Poets Society, but why does Neil Perry get the new kid as a roommate? Why isn't Neil already rooming with Knox or Charlie or Cameron?
I'm not sure how that works. For movie conventions, I'm sure. New kid has to land somewhere, right? And maybe they have a system of tradition, of excellence, of patience in place where you get a slightly older kid to mentor the newbie or whatever, to help him find his place.
Yeah, I guess you could say that Neil, if anybody, would be positioned as like the welcome squad. He's probably the kind of kid who would volunteer to take the new kid under his wing because he's so generous and so inclusive and well connected and such a natural leader. Like maybe I could definitely see a world where Neil Perry was like, I volunteer to room with the new kid because I'm just that kind of good kid. So, okay, but I think that what's really behind that question is I didn't get the feels watching Dead Poets Society. I felt pretty distinctly outside of this experience. I think in this rewatching of Dead Poets Society, I'm in the DPS is overrated camp.
Man, I thought maybe because it's kind of a sausage fest. Maybe.
Maybe?
I was watching.
I just can't relate because these are dudes being dudes.
I was watching Kelly Ray, and she maybe was missing a little bit of the reverence, the momentous, haunting scene where we're, that didn't work in Nickel Boys, where we're looking at the faces of the kids who all were once lovers and passionate people who are now worm food. And it's like haunting, and you're like, oh my goodness, today is the only day. If I don't seize the day, I'm going to be forgotten like these kids. And he goes, seize the day, boys. And I was like, ooh, and I got little chills, even in my older middle age. And Kelly Ray was like, was he wearing a jockstrap on his neck? That one kid? Was that a jockstrap? And I was like, what? But I realized that I will probably never again ride a bike down a grassy hill at breakneck speed and displace 1,000 birds ever again. Like, that's probably gone.
That is the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Right? And the fact that you didn't have your Mr. Keating or any teacher figure like that at this ultra impressionable age of what? Maybe 14? 15 at the oldest? Is sad because every one of these kids, including Neil, needed it. But for teachers, this was the relationship between students and unconventional teachers and how they directly impact a student's life. And we run the gamut here. From Todd, who breaks out of his little shell and stands up on a desk in defiance, to Neil, who takes it to an absolute extreme, to Nwanda, who gets kicked out of school when he was never really destined. I mean, it was a stupid prank, and I cringe every time he takes that awkward phone call. And Malachi got to his, or whatever his name was, the child with the corns, he emerged into his villain role. And he seized the day and took his own initiative to be a punk, to be a Mr. Perry in training, basically.
I can get behind the anti-conformity message. I believe in the concept of seizing the day. They may be a little trite in my stage of life, but important messages for, like you said, these impressionable ages. Does Dead Poets Society kind of function on another level? Does it work on an emotional frequency that it does for most people? For me, I give this movie an I, like I would use your scale. I feel like there's never been a more appropriate movie for an I rating. It's okay.
Yeah, and I will give this movie a good because I do think that its intentions were good. And part of the goodness of this movie is that it didn't shy away from the more real aspects. This wasn't a fairy tale. People got whopped on the butt, and people died, and people cried and stumbled through the snow screaming their roommate's name, and it was very sad, but it was also real. They find a person who will take those passions that they're suppressing and giving it its outlet. And that's where it works for me.
Some interesting comparisons to other teacher movies like the time setting for the original era of Mr. Holland's Opus and, the unconventional teaching methods a la Whiplash or or Lean on Me. Certainly worth the discussion. Obviously a classic, beloved by many. Maybe I'm just not the target audience for Dead Poets Society, given where I am, my stage of life or my gender or whatever it is.
Your lack of sausage.
Exactly. But all right, cool. I mean, whatever. It's all right.
Did you take issue, like Kelly Ray did, when she said, okay, Carpe Diem does not include kissing unconscious girls?
Do we go a little easier on Knox because it was on the forehead?
I guess, but Chad or whatever, or Hubert, or what was the kid's name?
I think it was Chad or Chet or something white.
Chet, that's exactly it. Wrapped him on the beak for that indiscretion.
As well he should have. I mean, yes, he should not have kissed. He should not have touched in any way an unconscious woman. But, because we have the context for just how innocent or pure his love is for this girl, I don't know. Maybe it was just all hormone driven. And he, what did he know about her other than he thought that she was pretty?
Kids are idiots. She said, you don't know me. And that is our discussion on Dead Poets Society, an important part of Teacher Month at Or Whatever Movies. Iris, how can people get a hold of us?
818-835-0473 or whatevermovies@gmail.com. Check out 300 plus other discussions at orwhatevermovies.com or wherever you get podcasts, and Carpe Diem.
Hi, I'm Sherilyn Fenn from Twin Peaks. What did you do on your last Saturday night?
Did you hear something?
Toilet paper.
There's none. Nada. The reserves have gone dry. People are hoarding it. I should have done that.
They're all out of hand sanitizer at my Target.
Mark, when did you last watch the news?
We are getting reports of forced quarantines in China, Japan, and now Italy.
You're cutting onions in half and putting them around your apartment.
Yes, exactly. It kills the COVID.
Excuse me?
Let's go. Let's go. Get in.
Vamos, rápido.
Have you ever driven one of these?
Never.
I'll drive, ladies.
I've got the keys.
Excuse me, I'm lost. I'm looking for my wife. I got turned around.
Join me, Eric Roberts, Jennifer Elise Cox, and Ed Asner for The Last Saturday Night, an Electrocast podcast. You'll love it. Electrocast. Electrocast.